All right. So, tell me about when you first the war and when you first you said about guarding the bridge.
Well, first I guess I was a pretty bad boy and had been sent away to the Lunenburg Academy, and I found there was such a thing called girls' study. So my father did in a place where I would study. He sent me to King's Collegiate School, which was a military school, and that's how I got the Sea Cadets. In the Army Cadets. And I made the track team, and evidently I must have been pretty good because I broke the record at the school, and who was there to see it but Colonel Bullock of the West Nova Scotia Regiment. And the regiment would get judged by their sports in the summer camp. So he recruited me, and of course, big pay of $1 a day was a lot of money to a boy in 1938 or 39, so I went to summer camp, and that's how I got with the West Novies in the first place.
And when war was declared, they called you up almost instantly.
Well, you see, that would be the summer camp of 1939 that I was recruited for, and in August, I believe it was the 26th of August, we mounted guard on the armories in Bridgewater, and I was called up as a private to mount that guard. And where it was only a corporal's guard, within 2 weeks I got promoted to corporal. Then war was declared on the 3rd of September, and I signed the active service paper. But you see, my company commander was my assistant headmaster of King's Collegiate School, so he had my right age. And although you had to be 19 to go overseas, I tried to be 19, but didn't lie to John Hebb. So I got left behind. When the regiment went over, I was put in the regimental depot.
How did you feel about that, being left behind?
I didn't like it, but not what could I do about it. And then that depot was disbanded, and I became a staff member of A14 in Aldershot Camp. I had the rank of sergeant when that was formed. I stayed there and became a company sergeant major. And my job was teaching second lieutenants to become lieutenants. Then the RSM got promoted to commission of Camp RSM, I should say. And I got acting Camp RSM of a boy of 20 years of age. And there was 5,000 men in the camp at that time. And I was informed by the camp commandant that if I took the permanent W01 job, which was a beautiful job, if I took that, I'd have to stay with him 3 years because he didn't like changing W01, so I decided I didn't want the job, and he gave me my commission, and I went overseas after I qualified.
So when did you join the West Novas on active service?
I joined them in 1943 at Crete, Scotland, before we started to go off for action.
So just before.
You'll have to do that again.
Yeah, all the
Even with the with the ticking, is it too bad or?
Oh, well, you'll have to do over that because I couldn't hear the.
Oh yeah, sure. But okay, well that's
Same
fine.
press, same
we can
answer.
miss that bit. Did you land in Sicily with the regiment?
Oh yes.
Can you describe your thoughts of going in and landing on Sicily?
Well, I got given the job of being aircraft defense on the liner. And I was in a dummy, my platoon was placed in a dummy funnel on this liner. And we were looking up at airplanes flying overhead. I can tell you, I was seasick. You want to get seasick, look in the air at something. So, it was a horrible storm the day before we went ashore and all that night, but we did get ashore. And we were, the West Novies of a reserve platoon, our reserve regiment of the 3rd Brigade, so we didn't get ashore till the middle of the afternoon. And the beach was a little calmer.
Did you, I know there was a pretty big barrage. Did you observe the barrage? Or
Oh
were you
yes,
below
well,
decks?
we would be aboard the liner watching the barrage go in. And I can remember the Navy commander, when he briefed us, telling us, describing that what the weight of fire that was going to be put in. And then he told the boys if they didn't get off the beach quick, they better close their eyes because they were shooting the second wave, and when they shot that in, there'd be a lot of sand flying. So he had no trouble getting off the beach. The boys went off as fast as they could.
But there wasn't too much opposition on the beach at all by the point you came in.
No, not where we landed.
Right. So you pushed inland, but when was your first? What was your first action like?
Unfortunately, I drew the first night patrol. And it was a fighting patrol. And I was given an area that they wanted me to cover. And of course we had all our equipment, packs and everything with us. So we discarded them to get back in fighting order. And my backman had the job of guarding the clothing and what have you of the whole platoon. And when we come back, after completing our patrol, when we come back, here was one scared private backman sitting on top of things that the regiment had moved off. And of course, they probably had told him where they were going. The poor devil, I don't blame him. I'd be scared too if I'm sitting in enemy territory all by myself on packs. He didn't know where it was, so it took me over 24 hours until I caught up with the regiment.
Had anything happened on the fighting patrol? Did you make contact at all?
We didn't. The only contact that I really caught up with was the Royal 22nd Regiment, being in the same brigade as us. And I thought I had told them that we were tired and that they were going to have a rest, and that they should wake us up when they moved off, because I knew if I moved with that regiment, I'd be somewhere close to where the West Novies were. But they evidently didn't understand me, and they moved off. When I came to the next morning, there was Italians looking at me, which was, kind of way to bring you back to your senses a little fast. So it was about 4 in the afternoon, perhaps later, that I got caught up with the regiment. And we got ordered to dig in, and just by the time we got about halfway dug in, we had to move off again, so that was the rest we had.
So what was I know you had to take a number of towns on the relatively short campaign to take Sicily. Is there any actions that you remember in particular?
Well, our main battle was at a place called Catronova. we were assigned to take the place. Now, some historians say that the Germans ran when we attacked it. I got a different interpretation than that. I think they knew we were green troops with no battle experience at all, and I think they deliberately pulled out and let us take the town because they encircled us afterwards and we didn't get anything to eat for 48 hours. That's my interpretation of what they did. And we had to beat counterattacks off all the time we were there.
I'd actually, yeah, I'd heard of that, it seems they even demanded you surrender, didn't they?
What?
Didn't the Germans even ask that you surrender? They had you completely cut off from the town, didn't they?
No, they did, not to my knowledge, not with that one. At Libertania, they sent a party down to ask us to, but not at Cachuanova.
So at the Casanova, what else? I mean, can you describe
Well, we
what
stayed
happened
there until they got us. If a person got wounded, you couldn't get them out. You didn't have any food or water because you were cut off. They just encircled us. And the Carleton, New York, finally broke a way through. And then we got relieved from there, and the next place we went to, we had nicknamed Whistling Hill. There's where I got my first wound.
What happened there at Whistling
Well,
Hill?
we got ordered to go up and hold this area, and it's the first time I come in contact with these multiple mortars. We used to call them Moni Minis. They were mounted on the back of a vehicle, and they had 10 barrels, so they fired 10 bombs at one time. And I guess we were a little too careless. And after all, we were green troops. This is the first real scrap we'd been in at Cachuanova, and here's the next getting relieved from that. So we're still very green troops. I think we stayed too much above ground, and the Germans just sat there and watched us and let us have it. And there was 10 or 11 of my platoon got hit, as well as myself that day.
That's quite heavy casualties for one platoon, isn't it? Isn't that about a third of a platoon?
Yeah, it'd be a third. So, yeah. But that's,
Sounds like you got pummeled then. That's no good at all. Can you describe when you got hit? Because you did before, and you get hit in the butt.
yeah.
Yeah.
I dove for my slick trench, but I didn't have it dug deep enough. I got my head down, and I kind of left my rear up in the air and copped it.
So you had some time out in the hospital, I would assume.
Yeah,
but then,
let's see, that was the 26th. I didn't get back until the regiment was in Italy, and where the heck were we? We were about halfway up Italy in November when I joined them again.
and what action did they go into as soon as you got back?
Well, this would be before the Morno River Valley, so our brigade got moved over in the mountains at the Sango River, and that's where we had the bad scrap at Castle de Sangro, which was B Company, which was the company I was with.
Could you tell me about that?
Well, we had done patrols during the day, and the object of the patrol was just to show the Germans we were there and ready to fight. My platoon got in a little scrap. We got 2 Germans in the afternoon, and then that night we got ordered, B Company got ordered to take Castle de Sangro, as we called it. And we took off in a rainstorm. One platoon, that of Lieutenant Blanchard, was leading, and he made a mistake and went to the castle figuring the enemy were in the castle, and they weren't. They were around the outskirts of this building, and the minute they knew he was inside throwing bombs and stuff in the building, they opened fire on him. They really whittled that platoon down to nothing. He got killed. I think it was only about 8 or 10 got out of that platoon. Very scary night because my platoon ended up behind a stone wall, and I got orders to try to do a right flanking, so I went to look at the territory, and before we attacked, and I looked up and here was a German standing up, pasting me with bullets. So I figured he's standing right out in the open between two big rocks, and I figured I'd bowl him over. So I grabbed my rifle and took a pot shot at him. He never even winced. I missed him so bad. So finally I threw that away and grabbed
Oh. And could you say that again?
One more second. I
What's
just want to adjust, but
I mean, why are you so tight now, and
Okay.
why were you so tight as a group of
we were
fellows?
tied together because we were all chums like this Paul Fault. He just lives in the next village over. He and I played together as kids all our lives. If we joined up together, we're just friends. And then you become real close friends when you get in a regiment. I never had any brothers, but I had 850 of them in the regiment. Because you knew that if possible at all, they wouldn't leave you laying on it out there, they'd bring you home.
It's wonderful. So it's good to know
So
you have friends
we
like that.
stick together, that's for sure. Now there are other types of units where they're not so close. You take like the Air Force. They were from everywhere, eh? And not recruited in an area like an infantry battalion would be or an army outfit. And that's why we were so close.
If we could get the chronological, so you mentioned a couple of river crossings. So did you ever have to do a contested river crossing?
Oh, yes.
Can you tell us about that?
We went across the Sangro River. Now, you see, you either wade it or you go across by small boats. But usually in a river crossing, the most dangerous thing is an infantry person gets is if you happen to be in an area where they're going to put a bridge across, then they'll send a platoon, a company, you know, or depending on what size of the operation is, across, and you've got to defend it while the engineers put the bridge across. And that's really dirty work.
Did you have to do that?
I assisted. I never was charged with doing that, but I would support, you know.
So you'd be on your shore shooting and supporting that
Yeah.
platoon that went across, yeah? So, do you remember anything like, any particular things about one of those episodes that would have been the worst, or?
I think the worst that I saw was trying to ford the gully in front of Vertona. And first we have to consider the type of weather we were in. It was in December, it was raining, you couldn't send airplanes up to see what, you know, to do any visiting in front of you. You were using maps made perhaps by the enemy that you were just marking, you got and developed and were marking for yourselves, and they weren't very active. And the first, oh, let's see, this would be about somewhere around the 1st of December in 43, we had crossed the Sangro River, and we're trying to take this gully. Fraser's BV company got detached for something else, and the rest of the regiment was ordered to go across this gully. They got stopped in their tracks, had very heavy casualties. And B company with 2 platoons, one of them was mine and the other was Jones, did some patrol work, and we found a way around it. We didn't have to take this beating. And Jones's platoon put in an attack, knocked out 3 tanks, and captured the commanding officer of the German unit, and he received the military cross there. And then the rest of us went up on B company to hold it. But we had to go back and rejoin the regiment, and when B company rejoined the regiment, there was only 120 people left in the regiment of 850. And the next attack we did, there was only, we had ourselves down to 2 platoons, or 2 companies, and each company would be 60 men. We went in on the attack, and that's when I got shot in the head, and that ended the war for me. After the war, I did get back to see the area, and I could tell you, if our general would have known where he was trying to put us across, he'd have never tried it. It was a paved highway dug in the side of a bank, and as we were attacking to go in this gully, all the Germans was doing was driving their tanks up and down, shooting us down.
Do you remember the time leading?
Excuse me.
No problem.
I just
Do
got
you need
that.
a drink of anything? Or?
No, all right. I just want to get this cough over with.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Because it's a very dramatic thing. I mean, was it a frontal assault? Did you have to, those 2 last remnants of the companies?
Remember, I got shot in the head, so I don't know a hell of a lot about it.
Yeah.
So, but what I have been told and what I have gathered, our last attack lasted about 7 minutes, and then the half of it was gone. So that means the regiment would come out with around 60 men. That's what I'm told. So, in other words, we were not effective. They took the regiment right out the line because there was not enough left. And of course, a regiment doesn't put all its members in any one battle. You leave like the 2IC of the regiment out. You leave the 2IC of so many companies out of battle. So many sergeants are out of battle. So many sergeant majors are out of battle. That's for things that happen, did happen to us at the gully. Then you can reform your regiment again, you see.
So you don't have, because of your wound that you took, you don't have many memories of that day then, I guess, right?
Well,
of leading up to the attack, or?
Oh, I got up to the attack, yes.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about that? How it would have been for you as you were preparing? Were the men scared, knowing that when the regiment was worse than decimated at that point?
how can you say that? Your worst time in an attack, this is as far as I'm concerned, is when you get to the forming up place, or the start line, whatever you want to call it, and you're there and you've got time to think. That's a bad time. When your barrage or whatever you're having and supporting you starts, by then you're too busy. You know, you got to look after yourself, and so you're too busy. That doesn't scare you. And then the worst thing is if you do get a real scare is when it's all over and you go back and you got time on your hands to think how close it was. So, you know, that's when you're really scared. But when you're actually fighting, you're too busy to be scared. And all the training you've had automatically takes over. Or at least that's my opinion of it.
So you would have just basically woken up back in a hospital, I guess, eh? Just out of nowhere and just...
Well, when I come to, as I remember, I guess I made a pass at a nurse. And she said, well, all you married men are the same. And I said, married? I'm not married. She said, oh, yes, you are. And of course, she had my officer's record book of service. They'd thrown the rest of my clothes away, but she had that, so they knew what course I had and where I belonged and all this. And she read off, and she says, you're not only married, you have a son. I didn't know anything about it. The next thing I knew, there was a doctor there interviewing me. And guess what job he gave me? To write home to my father and mother and my wife that I didn't know who the hell they were, write them a letter.
That's bizarre, right? That's crazy. Well, I'm going to ask you a couple of specific questions, and they don't have to, I mean, they're not from any particular time. They're just your impressions of when you're in the war. And who was your best friend while you were in the West Novas?
Who was my best friend? I had a lot of them.
Tell me about some of them. Tell me about them all. It's all good.
Well, I like my company commander, Lou Burns, and a couple sergeant majors that I thought the world of.
This your Captain Burns. What was he like?
Heck of a nice guy. That's all. I liked him. Yeah, I mean, you somebody. There's people you like and people you don't like, isn't it? Well,
What happened to Captain Burns?
well, he lived through the war. Like the rest of us, he's going away now. He's dead now.
Went west. Nope. I want the dramatic bell.
Wait for the ring off. Okay.
Okay. And you're saying some of your sergeant majors? Do you remember any fellows in particular that
Yeah,
were good guys?
the first sergeant major I had, Red Foley from Bridgewater. He's a hell of a fine fellow.
Was he in your platoon?
What?
He was in your platoon?
No, he was my company sergeant major when I was and then when I got commissioned, he was still sergeant major. But he was a real good soldier, the kind of a guy you could depend on. And then I had buddies like Reggie Bullock, Colonel Bullock's son. Of course, we'd gone to school together. He and I were very close buddies.
It's a very sad story about what happened to Reg and with his father.
Yes, and it hits me particularly because when I come back from being wounded the first time, Reg and I were school pals. So he said to me, he says, Gordon, he said, we've grown up. When he saw me coming back to the regiment, he said, we don't go out with scratches anymore. So the day before I got my bad one, I see them helping Reggie down. And I said, Reg, come back fast. Remember, we're men now. You don't go out with scratches and you never come back. It's always a hell of a way to say goodbye to you, but a friend.
It's sad. Were you at his funeral service?
Oh,
No,
I was unconscious myself in the hospital.
Must have been really tough on you. Do you have any other fellas that you remember and that you want to commemorate? Men that you admired or respected and you want remembered?
Oh, there's would be just too many of me.
That's fair. A lot of good men. It seems that's what a lot of these guys have been saying, is that just so many good guys, you can't remember them all. What's your happiest memory about your time with the West Novas?
Oh, fellowship, friendship. Well, as you see today, you've been here, I got 2 phone calls, one from the chap's wife and one from the guy that I joined up with. This is us, this is our life.
60 years after the fact, and you're still
60 years.
It's incredible. Do you have a particularly happy memory of being with the West Novas, like a great party or a time that you felt most relieved, or just a time that was,
I would say it's a part of your life that I'm proud I have, and I always get the feeling that those who didn't go through it have really missed something.
it's an unparalleled experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
I guess it's only good if you're the guys that make it through, though, eh?
Beg your pardon?
It's only good if you're the ones that made it through. Like, to have that experience, it kind of necessitates that some aren't going to make it. It's a shame of it. Do you remember, is there anything funny? You remember any particularly funny
Oh,
experiences?
yes, you made your own fun.
Yeah. So what did you guys do for fun?
Huh?
What did you do for fun?
What would you think a 21-year-old fellow would do for fun?
Well, chase girls and get drunk a lot? That's what I did. Yeah. Well, we can leave that off the record. If there's nothing that you want left on the historic record, that's understandable. It sounds like you guys had a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, as I say, I had 850 brothers. And we figure that from the time men that had wore our badge, that would be about 4,500 people went through the West Nova Scotia Regiment. So you got an awful lot of buddies.
Absolutely. As a lieutenant, how was your rapport with your actual platoon? Did you...
Well, you see, I was a different breed than the majority of officers. I came up through the ranks. I was a private, I was a corporal, I was a sergeant, I was a company sergeant major, and I acted as RSM.
to the men?
Now, in some ways, some of the sergeants didn't like having a lieutenant like me. Because if I told them to do something, they said, oh, you can't do that, because you could tell a fellow that came from college, got his commission in college and came, He could tell him he wouldn't know the difference. But I could tell him how to do it. See, because I had been a sergeant. Some of the, you know, they couldn't pull the wool over your eyes.
They wouldn't like that, but I guess the average man would have respected.
Oh
being
yeah,
off
it
the
was,
ranks.
it was a heck of a lot better being that way. Or at least I always thought so.
I think so too. What do you think's the bravest thing you ever saw? Is there any man that did something that you thought was, or a group of men that you thought was particularly brave?
I think Lieutenant Jones when he attacked that battalion headquarters at the gully, that's about as brave a thing as I saw, because he knew what he was in. He was attacking with 3 tanks himself. And he had 30 men, but he didn't know how many, you know, Germans was around his headquarters. And he took them on. I think that's about the bravest that I saw.
Did you personally witnessed him charging in?
Not, no, because I would be supporting, in support of him, the same with the other platoon. There'd be 2 platoons in support. If he got in trouble, we'd have been ordered in. But he didn't get in trouble. And everything worked. You know, for instance, I got a nickname, they call me Bonehead in the regiment. If there's a lot of men, if you say Gordon Romkey, they wouldn't know who that is. But if you say Bonehead Romkey, they'll know who they're talking about. And I'll tell you how I got it.
Sure.
I got orders to occupy a town, but I had to leave one section, which would be 10 men of my platoon, halfway there, because our wireless set wouldn't carry the distance I was to go. So that meant I had 20 men. So I had told my sergeant how we were going to go to dump off these 10 men. And he asked me, how are you going to go into town? And light bulb just come on, and I just said, the Germans won't think anybody is stupid enough to walk up the center of a main highway and walk into a town, so that's the way I'm going, and that's the way I went. I didn't go cross country, I just walked the road right smack up the center and went into town and occupied it. The next day, Captain Burns got ordered to bring the other two platoons up to occupy the town. And he went cross country. And he had to fight his way across. So when he come in, he says, Gordon, he said, how many men did you lose getting in here? I said, not a damn one. He said, how did you come in? I told him, he said, you boneheaded bastard. That was in front of Company Sergeant Major Black and a few more, so I was bonehead from that day on.
That's hilarious. That's pretty funny. What town was that?
Huh?
What town was that you walked in? Do you remember the name of the town?
I could find it for you.
Yeah, if you could, because that'd be funny. I'm sure we'll have that included.
I can't remember the name right now, but I can find it.
Yeah, it might be a tiny, might have been a village, or was it a good sized town?
Oh no, it's a good sized town.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, if you could, I'd appreciate that. Do you remember a time that you were most afraid?
You won't like this one. The scaredest I ever was after I did something. I was sent out with 2 men to do a reconnaissance patrol. That means you don't fight, you just see it come. And we were crawling all along this field on our belly. I parted grass, or whatever, grain or whatever was in front of me. And I saw two eyes beneath the helmet looking me right smack in the eye. About, well, to me it looked about 10 feet away, but perhaps a little more. And, well, I was the officer, so I was supposed to do something, eh? So I got the other two fellows to lay doggo and crawled around. He was a dead German there. But you know, it scared me so that I had to go on the ration truck the next day because I had got the shakes. You don't know what, it's just all cleared.
Completely understandable, though. Absolutely. That would scare the piss out of me, I'll tell you. Was he Fallschirmjäger?
What?
Was it one of the German parachutists, or do you remember how he looked? I mean, well, dead, but...
I don't think I tried to look at his uniform, but I was just so damn glad he was dead. Weren't we told? You want me to find that place?
Well, no. I got maybe about 5 more questions. Is that okay? And then if you could find it, and then I'll just take a couple. I want to take a picture of you in the other room, and then we're set.
I want to, when you finish your question, I want to go back and check that where the place I coughed didn't go over something important.
Okay.
Because
sure.
I did cough in a crucial.
So, are you up for just a couple more questions, Gordon?
Mm.
Okay.
Let me just adjust my framing.
What did you hate most about your time in the Army?
I never hated the Army.
You liked it?
Oh yeah.
That's fair. What did you like about the Army?
Just like it.
The Brotherhood of Men.
If I wouldn't have got shot up, I'd have been a professional soldier. I wouldn't have done anything else.
Sounds like it was good to you. What do you think? What do you think was the toughest battle that you had to go through?
Fighting for the gully in front of Bartona. I don't think we ever got shot up like that I know of. Or at least it's not recorded anywhere that I can find it. Now they had some bad ones at the Hitler line, and they did a hell of a fine job at the Hitler line. They did a wonderful job at the Gothic line.
But the Gully is definitely a famous, awful battle. So
we took the worst pounding there.
But you still took the position, though, didn't? Or is it just?
We just held it. That's all.
Oh yeah.
You see, that's where Paul Choquette. By the way, that job that Jones did led to Paul Choquette getting his VC. Because that was the way. We showed the way to get past this damn gully. To get it, and that's how he got in and won his VC there afterwards. So, in other words, the gully is a big battle honor for us because it ended up to be the key to take Ortona.
You want that phrase again, the gully is a big battle honor for us.
Could I, just so that it does get recorded, because we couldn't use it over the clock, but could you, that last statement you made about just...
The gully's a big battle honor for us.
The gully is a big battle that opened up for Ortona. Could you make that statement?
Well, it was just the finding of the way around the gully that led for Paul Choquette to get his VC, and that was the key that opened up the way to capture Ortona.
Great. Yeah. As an infantry soldier, what was the firearm that would you use? Did you carry a rifle the whole time? Or did you carry a Tommy gun?
I carried a Tommy gun, and I carried a rifle. I think I preferred the Tommy gun because if you have a rifle, you can shoot a long distance, and I always figured it wasn't my job to take on targets. My job was to find targets for the other people. So if I have a Tommy gun, it'll shoot double the distance of my revolver that I'm issued with, but it's still, not something to gauge at long range.
Did you ever have to fire your Tommy gun in anger?
Oh, hell yes.
Do you remember any specific times when it was a close call? Did you have any house-to-house fighting?
Not what I would call host to host, but well, I guess you can. I've shot people around houses, but wasn't that I was trying to force my way into a house. They were just there, and I didn't want them around.
It seems like infantry soldiers, the ones that make it through, like the ones that live through the war, are fellows that were really good at it and have had to put the end to a lot of their opponents. Would you say that you were in combat a lot, and did you would have had to kill a lot of Germans, I guess? Would you say?
Well, as I say, it wasn't my job to engage targets. My job was to find targets and get my men engaging.
Did you ever get surprised by a German?
Oh,
and have to
you get surprised at that's war. You never know what to meet. For instance, if you're a colonel and you're sending me out on patrol, you can tell me what you want me to do. But for God's sake, don't you try to tell me how to do it, because I'll tell you to go to hell right off the bat, because you don't know what I'm going to encounter out there. So
That's fair. What were your thoughts on the Germans that you had to fight?
why?
What did you think about the Germans that you had
They
to
were
fight?
perfect soldiers. And if you're green troops going in here, they'll give you one hell of a pasting.
What made them so good?
Training.
They're just very well trained.
You wouldn't believe it.
What would you say about the German equipment too? The German tanks, the German guns?
Oh, way better than ours. For instance, our Bren gun fired 500 rounds a minute. Their equivalent light machine gun fired 1,500 rounds a minute. Their anti-tank gun would fire twice as far as ours. It took roughly two of our tanks to knock out one of their Tigers.
So how come we won? How come Canadian boys consistently won?
You had to learn to compensate for what you did. Now, you take Montgomery, when he took over the 8th Army, the first thing he did was order his army to fight my way. Don't try to ape the Germans. This is one of the big mistakes that was being made before. Our tanks weren't as fast as the Germans' tanks. And yet our fellows, when they'd stop the Germans, would try to do a big encircling movement and get blown to bits in the meantime of doing it. Somebody says, we're going to be better on defense. He put the 8th Army decidedly on a defensive scale and let the Germans come to them so he could kill them off. And that's just what he did. He fought his battle, not the way the Germans wanted to fight. And that's one of the things you had to learn, but you had to learn that by experience.
That's fair enough. What was the closest you ever saw one of your fellow soldiers get hit to you?
You mean to where I am?
Yeah, to like, did you,
Oh,
were you,
well, right alongside of me.
do you remember one of your buddies?
Well, okay, every officer had a batman. Now, a batman, please don't think is a servant. He's not. He's there for your protection. He carries the machine gun, the light machine gun. He also carries the wireless, so you can get in communication. Now, if you say you capture an objective, I, as the officer, would have to be telling the men where to dig in and how I wanted things laid up. Who's looking after my hole? He does. He does my work for me. So he, usually a batman, is the private you'd love to make a corporal if he'd take it, sort of idea. In other words, he's a damn good man that you pick for a batman. And there's a hell of a lot of fellows won't take batman's job. Because when they attack, he's standing right alongside the officer, and they always trying to bump the officer, or officer who's got a bigger chance of getting bumped up.
So do you remember your Batman?
I had 3, I guess. I had one when I went into Sicily, but then you see I didn't go back to the same company, so I didn't get him back. And the next fellow I got back got killed. He got killed at Castle in the Sangro. And the next one I had is the guy that got me out of action when I got hit in the head. Or at least I think it was him. I give him the credit for it anyway.
What was his name?
What?
What was his name?
Jack Arsenault. And he came from outside of Summerside, PEI. And I haven't saw him since.
Well, I'll pull
I know he didn't get killed.
Good.
And I know he wasn't a casualty of the West Novas, but what else? Just disappeared in thin air.
What do you think the worst thing you saw was during the war?
Blowing up of buildings, I would have to say that it was just loaded with civilians. Be the worst I saw.
Where was that?
Well, anywhere. You go attack a town, you blow up a building, there's civilians in it, there, that's it. But you don't like singing that. That's
Well, I won't bug you about it. Is there any final things that you feel are important to say about your time with the West Novas, or men that you want commemorated, or anything that you just want history to remember?
They were one hell of a bunch of good men. And that they should know were.
You're proud to be a West Nova?
Oh yes, definitely. Well, as I said, we won 26 battle honors and only one regiment beat us, so why wouldn't I be proud of them?
That's great.